AI cannot use present data to predict the future. Only humans can predict the future.
Adam Nathan is the CEO and the co-founder of Blaze, which is the #1 marketing AI tool for teams of one.
Blaze is like the most patient person you've ever had, where Blaze can endlessly think of new variations. It can post them all day long. It can do the analysis objectively.
He's putting the AI power in the hands of small businesses. I just finished recording this episode with him, and what I love about it is that he didn't hold back on sharing the insights, the lessons, and the mindset needed in order to run a successful startup.
If you are able to listen to them and swallow your ego, that actually enables your success, because then you're building for somebody else. You're building something people will want and will buy and will love, rather than the thing that you think is right.
If you're either looking to learn how to leverage AI in your marketing or building a successful startup that people actually love and use, I might be biased, but might not be a better use of your time at this moment than listening to this episode. Enjoy. Adam, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Gabe.
My pleasure. Man, you have such an interesting and diverse background, from competitive skiing to working in a White House, then Apple, Lyft, raising 45 million in funding for Almanac, and basically burning ships and starting a new venture with Blaze AI. How that happened?
One important note is that we didn't actually start over in many senses. So the team that is building Blaze, or behind the scenes at Blaze, is the same team that built Almanac. So it's the same company, the same core group of people. But we've been working together for 5 years now. The average tenure on our team is actually 4.5 years, and so most people have been working with me, on this journey for a while now. And also, Almanac, in many respects, was a success. We grew the business to thousands of enterprise customers. We had really large corporations using Almanac to manage their collaboration across time zones and geographies. We were probably the leader in the async collaboration space. And we're actually in the process of selling Almanac to one of those companies for a good amount of money. So, in many respects, it's a success story. But the reason when we pivoted is because even though Almanac was growing really fast, it wasn't growing fast enough in startup land, but especially if you raise venture dollars, you need to find a market that can grow from zero to basically $1 billion in value in 10 years. And there's just not many markets in the world that can do that. In fact, starting any business, it's really hard to find a good market, because most markets that have obvious demand have products that serve them. And so being a founder is kind of like being a prospector for minerals or gold, where you're searching for a seam of interest that other people can't see or other people think is not valuable. But most of the time, that seam emerges when there's a disruption in the landscape, either from new technology like AI, a new change in behavior like remote work, or a new government regulation like the Dodd-Frank bill that I worked on in the Obama White House, that led to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau here in the United States and led to many new startups around fintech. And so often new markets emerge essentially when there's a big change in the landscape, where a market that looked bad or didn't exist at all comes out of nowhere. And that's why you see often many startups betting or banking on these types of trends. And again, it's just really hard to do. In product market fit, it's basically easy these days, given enough time and resources, to build anything that you want. You can even build spaceships. The hard part about building a company is finding the right market. And so with Almanac, we made a bet essentially on remote work as a trend. And I think that we were right about that. But remote work is more like climate change. In retrospect, it's, I think, a 30-year trend that will take a generation of managers to retire and ultimately die before younger people like me and my peers get into management and leadership positions and implement remote or distributed work everywhere. And so 30 years is longer than the 5 to 10 year time horizon we had with our venture investors, with the dollars that we raised. We didn't have enough money to wait those decades to see if our bet on remote work was right. And so remote work is, it's still advancing despite a lot of pushback in different sectors. Young people prefer distributed work. It's better for companies over time. I think, again, the world will come around broadly to this consensus in our lifetimes, but not in the lifetime of the company that we had built with the money that we had. So, this is a kind of a classic example in startups where the company is growing fast but not fast enough. And at the same time, we had built at the core of Almanac a document editor, which is really, really hard to build. Uh, but besides rocket ships, I think one of the next hardest things to build is kind of an open secret in engineering is a document editor. It's you need a lot of features. They have to work really, really well for lots of different use cases, which is why there's so few productivity and collaboration suites in the market. You really only have Microsoft and Google. It took Notion 10 years to build their solution. It took Figma 8 years. It took Airtable 9 years. It takes a long time to build resilient productivity software that can serve big customers well. And we had built basically a solution that was working for a lot of those companies. And that product foundation, that document editor, was basically perfectly placed for the coming wave that we saw around AI. And if you think about climate change or remote work as climate change, I think AI is more like a tsunami, where it had looked and now has become this massive wave that's just crashing into industry after industry and changing how things work. And we had basically built a surfboard perfectly positioned to ride that wave, because the first use cases around AI were around generating copy and now images and video. And the hard part of AI isn't plugging into a model like ChatGPT or like Claude. The hard part is actually turning the content you get from those APIs into something that people can actually use, which is why there's many AI companies that are essentially wrapping themselves around ChatGPT, but don't provide any incremental value and die pretty quickly because they're not actually providing any additional value. Because it's really actually, the hard part isn't wrapping yourself around the API. The hard part is actually building a software platform or product that delivers value. And so we had built with Almanac this product foundation that was perfectly positioned to take advantage of AI. And so we decided to essentially build another company using the same product foundation, but ultimately for a different customer and under a different brand than Almanac. And so it's the best kind of pivot in my opinion, because there are many pivots, as you mentioned, where it feels like the boat's going down and then you flail and you try and do something else and you end up sinking anyway. In the case of Almanac to Blaze, our boat wasn't sinking. It just wasn't moving as fast as we wanted it to do. And we kind of were able to pivot that boat into a rocket ship that's now in an entirely different stratosphere.
Yeah, and that's fascinating about your move because first, if I remember correctly, you managed to grow it to 10 million without funding, and after that, you skyrocket from there with Blaze. And what's fascinating, it's your approach to an industry that there was competition, but you still managed to take it over by just not only being different, but implementing the AI, as you said, a solution that often people don't know how to use and make it useful into something that people actually can use. And speaking of that, because there are a lot of misconceptions here when it comes to creating content that actually sounds like you with AI. Because a lot of people struggle and they just give up because they try some prompts in ChatGPT and they're like, oh, this doesn't sound like me. I won't use it anymore. How does Blaze do this differently, and how your approach to actually making a tool that people can use daily is different than all the others that fail in this space?
When we came along and launched Blaze, I think, in the broad wave of AI, Blaze is still very early, but we weren't as early as tools like Copy.ai and Jasper, which were pretty huge in the market when we launched. So there were some, incumbents, so to speak. But when we tried those products and more importantly, talked to customers who were using them, we realized that the products themselves weren't very good. They weren't actually generating copy or content that people wanted to use. And the core assessment of that quality was really around, as you mentioned, personalization. Like, does the content sound like me? Does the content look like me? And if people say no, they often ditch it. And so those products actually had really high churn, really unsatisfied customers because they weren't producing a high quality product for the job to be done. And so the first thing that we did with Blaze was invest pretty deeply into a suite of personalization features. We started with a feature called Brand Voice, where if you give us your website, we can analyze the way that you write on 7 different metrics, things like syntax and tone and audience and purpose. And we importantly allow our customers to edit that. And so if it's not right, you can go in and tweak it to make sure that it's 100% you. And yeah, it's the first thing we ask people to do in the product. People love the feature. It's why people, I think, stick around to try more of what we built. We then built a feature called Brand Styles, where if you integrate with your Instagram page, we scan your content or your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page. We scan your content to assess your photo vibes, the fonts you use, the colors you use, your logo, so that when we produce visual content for you, things like social media images or videos for TikTok or YouTube, that content looks and feels like you, not just sounds like you, but reflects your brand and your style. And now we're about to launch this feature called Brand Kit, where if you integrate, for example, your Google Drive or your Notion files or just upload a PDF, we can learn about your business. So we can understand your products, your services, your customers, almost like hiring somebody on your team. The kind of onboarding you give to them, you can now give to Blaze. And we do this in seconds for you. And we actually read that content over time. So if you integrate with a social media account or your files, we will go back through every day and see what's new, so that as your business is changing and growing, Blaze's understanding is also evolving as well. And so it's not a one-time scan. It's something that that changes automatically. And in that way, a lot of people think about Blaze or really describe Blaze to us not as like a tool. They don't compare it to Canva or ChatGPT. They compare it these days to a person. I had a customer tell me today that they are firing one of their agencies and using Blaze instead. I had a customer yesterday tell me that they're not going to hire a social media manager because they found Blaze does a better job than the person they had before. And so Blaze is kind of like the very best, most effective marketer you've ever had on your team, who can understand your business, think through strategy, generate content, schedule and post it, analyze it to improve, all automatically, while you do other things or sleep at night. And that's the great thing about AI, is that a lot of the difficulty of creating content is the syndication replication. It's that you have to say the same thing 100 different ways, 1,000 times a month, and across all these channels. And that's hard for the human brain to do, but it's also really boring. And for our customers who are wearing 10 hats at the same time, they have many other things they could be doing than trying to figure out how to rephrase something from LinkedIn to Instagram to YouTube. And Blaze is kind of like the most patient person you've ever had, where Blaze can endlessly think of new variations. It can post them all day long. It can do the analysis objectively. It doesn't have a lot of the downsides that humans bring to work every day, and that we often need to be kept interested and do work that's fulfilling. Blaze can do all the boring stuff for you. And so it's a really useful addition to a lot of our customers, because it can look and sound like you, but do other things that humans can't.
So personally, I'm very bullish on the fact that AI, it's helping us tremendously to actually focus on the things that matters in our business rather than doing the boring stuff. And boring can be and mean different for different people. Some people love creating content and writing. Others, they're not either good at it or it's not their focus. And I actually had an interesting conversation with a mastermind in a mastermind group that I participated on, in which almost every other people are against using AI writing specifically. And there are many reasons. One of them is that they enjoy it. Secondly, that they feel that it's helping them send their message more clearly out there and think differently and in a creative way. In the same time, they're also stating that there is a study that says that using AI in our daily tasks, and especially if you overuse it, will affect our cognitive ability. What's your take on that when it comes to what's the limit in the tasks that you have to use AI and those that are actually helping us?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get really theoretical about AI without actually practically using it. Steve Jobs used to compare technology as like a bicycle for our minds. And Apple's perspective, where I used to work, is that really great technology essentially automates or at least speeds up the boring aspects of work, so that humans can focus on the things that we are best at, the creative, authentic aspects of work, of a production that only a person can do. And I think this rule is true across time, across many waves of technology. It's not just AI. If you think about the role of the internet, and before that the computer, and before that the phone, and before that electricity, we've always used technology to essentially automate out the boring stuff so that we can focus on higher order jobs. And I think the same thing is happening with AI. I use Blaze all the time for my own content. If you look at my Twitter or my LinkedIn, if you look at Blaze's web pages, all that was generated with our tool. And the thing I find it helps me with, and I hear this as well from our customers, is that before I used to spend like hours staring at a blank page, grappling with my own sense of perfectionism around like, oh my God, what should I write? Will it be good enough? What will people think? What if it's bad? And I'd sit for hours procrastinating to just get like a simple blog post out or figure out what to, to figure out what to draft in a Twitter thread. Now with Blaze, I get to like a pretty good first draft that's like 90% as good, if not better than what I would do on my own within seconds. And I often go into it skeptical, being like, oh, well, what will AI know, that's better than what I know? But it actually is better most of the time. But because Blaze is built on a document editor for long form copy, and we have a visual studio for things like images and videos, I can edit the output from the AI and turn it from a really good first draft into an extraordinary final draft. And we think at Blaze that last 10% is the most valuable part of the process. I think AI will make it easier for people to generate pretty good content or great content, but humans value scarcity. We value authenticity. And AI, the way AI works, the way our LLMs work as models, is that they look over past data to basically predict the present, but AI cannot use present data to predict the future. Only humans can predict the future. And so our ability to create stuff that doesn't exist yet will become even more valuable in a world where anybody can get to pretty good. And that's what I see happening with our customers. Their content is just so much better than everything else in the market. Not just because AI is automating all the busy work out and getting them more quickly to something great, but that they then have more time to spend on the content with their own creative thoughts in ways that they didn't have before. So they can spend less time but add more value to everything that they do. And I think that's been true for me. That's true for our customers. The last thing I'll say on this is AI, of course, expands access to great content. Tools like Blaze give anyone the opportunity to produce great marketing, but not everybody will. Only a small group of people in the world, even in your industry, will be taking advantage of AI to create content that helps their business grow. This is true of any technology. You have GPS on your phones that can help you figure out how to eat, at like the best cafe in any city in the world. But my parents still can't figure out where the local Starbucks is in their neighborhood. And so just because you have access to great technology does not mean that it will like lead to this like socialist hellscape where everybody is consuming just mediocre content. I think it actually increases the disparity, because as people take advantage of the people who take advantage of powerful technologies do way better, and the people who don't take advantage end up doing way worse. And this is true, as you can see from the spread of any technology around the world. It doesn't bring actually us closer together. It pushes the extremes further apart. And I think the same thing is true with AI. So I'm not really sure if the people in your mastermind have actually used a tool like Blaze to produce work, but I find that it accentuates my creativity and gives me more time to think and dream and create than I had before.
Yeah, I love that perspective, because personally I agree with it. And it's funny that one of the objections they brought up to the table is the fact that one of them used AI for a long period of time to create content and arrive at the point where didn't even question the output, because was almost so sure that the output of the AI it's better than anything else, then didn't even question it. And I think that's a dangerous field to enter to. But indeed, if you leverage it correctly, and if you start from your own ideas, and personally the way I use it is just having more time for myself to think, rather than sitting in front of a blank page and trying to come up with ideas, doing a walk, doing other activities that energize me. And during those moments, I came up with ideas, and I took that idea and often record an audio note and transcribe that and put in AI, and that basically add the small touches, and then I revisit and see if indeed is needed more attention from me and put it out there. And yeah, I agree that if you leverage correctly technology, we can advance. Because, for example, let's say at some point in time, and people that are probably our age remember that we didn't have calculators or stuff to do the math, and you have to do everything in our brain. But at the end of the day, or memorizing, like the educational system where you have to memorize a lot of things is broken. Like, why our brain, its capacity, it's limited. Why put in it things that doesn't even matter? Like, Of course, history is important, but memorizing dates from the history doesn't bring any value to anyone. So going back to AI, same as with any other technology, if used and leveraged correctly, can advance things very, very fast. And speaking of this, like in what other aspects of your business are you using it? For example, you mentioned at some point one of the competitors, Canva, and I know that you recently have a very, very big hit with an ad using F Canva in the hook. And I think that's very creative. Do you use AI to come up with that idea, or your creative team did that?
So we don't, yeah, we use AI in some aspects of our business, but we rely on human creativity in many others, and we have a very small team of highly capable people who are building Blaze. We have 25 people on our team right now managing a customer base of millions of users. So a very small group of people doing a very big thing together. And we use AI in some areas where it really helps us scale our bandwidth and our productivity. So marketing, of course, things like our websites and a lot of our social posts, we use Blaze to help generate. We use AI in customer service to help triage a lot of responses. We use AI to do some analytics around large data sets. We're testing some AI tools around coding, although generally we haven't done that as much. But when it comes to our marketing and our brand, all of that, to my point earlier, is actually humans coming up with these kind of crazy ideas. We have like an army of influencers that we partner with who essentially act as our digital R&D lab. And so rather than just having the 2 or 3 people on our marketing team come up with ideas for ads and organic social media content, we essentially have deals or contracts with several hundred people who are thinking of new ways to pitch Blaze. And the great thing about this program is that we're able to basically get many, many more ideas from people who are expert in social media, who may be less familiar with our company, so they're able to look at it in a fresh way, who are closer to our customers than we are. And a lot of their ideas don't work. We put them on social media, they get a couple hundred views. That's basically a failure in social media land. But just like any kind of power law dynamics, we have the top 10% of those videos get millions of views. The top 1 or 2 have gotten tens of millions or hundreds of millions of views. And so we're able to basically kind of test new creative directions in the market and figure out what people really want, what people click on. And then what we do is we turn a lot of those ideas, those like single pieces of content, into campaigns or into paid ads. And so we basically take the things that work and we put money behind them to scale their reach. And so that's been a really effective way for us to grow the business much more cheaply than our competitors, who are kind of using generic copy and creative on the same keywords in the same platforms. We're smaller than Canva and many other products. And so our strategy is to figure out how do we make our dollars go further than theirs. And a lot of that is trying to advertise in places they're not, to people that they're not focused on, with creative that they would never dream of making themselves, that stops the scroll for our users and compels them enough to come over to Blaze and check it out.
I love that leveraging outside perspective, because often, we just can't see so much from our own little world. And speaking of that, like if someone is listening to us and they maybe just launched their own SaaS product, and apart from this tip that you just shared, what other points of leverage they can use in order to take it from just maybe a brilliant idea to something that's actually breaking inside the market and going up from there?
I mean, that's a hard question. Yeah. I think a lot of startup wisdom is wrong. I speak to new founders every day, and I'm often discouraging them from doing things that they read on a blog or heard somewhere in a podcast that at least aren't true in my experience. I'm a big believer that you shouldn't raise capital before you are scaling. You should try and bootstrap your business. I don't think that you need a co-founder, and I think a lot of people would be better if they just started businesses on their own and found a great founding team instead of an equal partner. But as I mentioned, the really hard thing about first building a company is finding the right market, because there's just very, very few markets like Blaze's that can support $1 billion business. And of course, the minute you raise venture capital, you're actually increasing the hurdle rate if you just don't. If you bootstrap, you can still build a 5, 10, $50 million business. You own close to 100% of it. That's a huge success. And there are more markets that can support revenue over 10 years of $5 or $10 million than $100 million. And so the minute you raise venture capital, you're making it harder on yourself, but people make that mistake anyway. I think the number one thing that you can do to try and find a breakout market is listen to your customers and narrow as much as possible. A lot of founders, I think, mistakenly believe that to be a founder means to have this very specific vision of the future, and that your job is to tell other people, what that future is and what products they should buy in and how they should act. It's kind of this like obstinacy that you might get from, mistaken archetypes of Steve Jobs, where it's, your job is to like be looking over the horizon and be like, oh, that's what it's going to be. Let me bring that to everybody. In fact, that almost never works, because there's a difference between basically building something for yourself that you think is right and building something for other people. And the distinction is that you are often not your customer. Even if you're building in a space that you know about, the people that you're serving are not you. There's way more people out there that you want to serve than you. And I am wrong all the time about what our customers need. And a lot of founders essentially, I think, face this choice often between being right about what they want to build, which I think is like building an art project, or listening to their customers, and in doing so, eating a big slice of humble pie, because often when you do that, you realize how wrong you are about what they need, what they really want, how they make decisions about products. But if you are able to listen to them and swallow your ego, that actually enables your success, because then you're building for somebody else. You're building something people will want, and will buy and will love, rather than the thing that you think is right. And I've gone through this process many times where the answer I think is true is not. And when I listen to customers, I end up being successful, because these days, basically, anytime a customer gives me a piece of feedback, I almost directly follow it. It goes straight into a linear ticket. It goes right to our engineering team, and we build it almost verbatim to what the customer wants, because the closer we listen to customers, the better the product will be for them, without any of my kind of thinking on top of it. And the kind of meta factor on top of all of this is the narrower your customer segment, the more specific a type of person you're serving, the more specific feedback they will give you, the easier, therefore, it will be to build, because it's a narrower slice of use cases or needs, and the faster you'll grow. And so a lot of founders make the mistake of trying to build for too large a market, for too ambiguous a persona, which of course means they don't really know who to listen to. The people they get feedback from, because it's such a wide market, are giving them all sorts of requests and needs. It's hard to satisfy all those very well in a given period of time, and they end up failing because they haven't built something great for anybody. And the thing that we've done with Blaze is that we have a really narrow customer segment, not actually in the type of person we serve, or not in the industry. We serve lots of different industries, but in the size of company. We tend to serve really small businesses. We call them teams of one. That's freelancers, agencies, podcasters and creators, small business owners, Shopify, e-commerce operators, life coaches, nutritionists, financial advisors, real estate agents. But what unites all of them is that they are working on a really small team, and they have to do marketing, but they're not professional marketers. And so even though they do different things, when it comes to marketing, their use case is exactly the same, which is, oh my God, I need to be posting on social media, or I need to write blog posts to anchor on SEO, but I don't know how to do that at all. I have no time, I have no skills, I have no money. And so that is a really consistent use case. And we're able to satisfy it for this really big market, because we are very, very focused on that customer, and also our competitors aren't. They're focused on big enterprise customers. So, everything I'm sharing here, I've learned the hard way over the years by being punched in the face, 100 times by getting it wrong. And that's kind of part of the journey, I think, of being a founder is you're wrong a lot. And where I see founders failing is by not listening and learning from their failures. And there's a key fork in the road for a lot of folks, which is, hey, you have an idea. The market is telling you that they actually want this other thing instead. Do you want to build your thing, or do you want to build a business that other people will pay for? And people who pick this path, even though it often means, again, swallowing your ego, living with humility by listening to your customers and building for them, that's the path to success.
Absolutely, because there are so much gold in our customers' feedback, ideas, and so on. But if you're going back in time when you just launched Blaze and maybe you didn't have a pool of customers yet to listen to, where you're hearing those feedback from? Where are you searching for answers to see what exactly is the feature you need? Why exactly this is the solution to go for? Because often people stop there, like they have this idea, but they have no idea where to look for that feedback and customer voice.
Yeah, well, with Blaze, we actually saw traction from day one, or even before day one. We knew the product. We knew we were onto something because we had a beta product that had hundreds of customers paying for it already. So we had a sense that we had some traction on the market, and that was only amplified when we launched it, and started getting tens of thousands of users within the first couple of days of releasing the product. So for us, identifying product market fit happened even earlier in time, and again, the first thing I think to do is to find some kind of disruptive trend that you think is going to create new market opportunities. For us, that was AI, and realizing, oh, this thing feels real. Where do we think there's going to be a market opening? And for us, we saw that the first use cases were around generating copy and then images and video. And we knew that the wave was so big that even though there were a lot of people in the market, there's probably some opportunity that someone hadn't tackled yet. In fact, today you could still launch, an AI marketing tool today and still probably find new opportunities. I think that'll be true even 3 or 4 years from now. They're still the wave is so big in this case with AI that it's going to disrupt every industry at every level. And there's just so many use cases on which you can build a good business. So I think the first thing is just like make sure you pick a really good wave. I surf. You're in Thailand. I don't know if you surf down there, but the thing with surfing is like the break that you go to is largely determines how good of a time you're going to have. You can be the best surfer in the world, but if you pick the wrong area of the beach, you're not going to find any waves. You're just going to be paddling all day long. You're going to get tired. You're going to hate it. So, and vice versa. If you're a terrible surfer, but you find somewhere that has perfect winds, perfect surf, you're going to have a great day without a lot of effort. And so great markets can forgive for bad product execution, and almost all products at the early days are incomplete, are low quality. And so a great market, which creates strong demand, essentially can mitigate for any weaknesses you have in your execution. I still am amazed by how bad some parts of our product is that our customers deal with because they really need the product so much. And so finding a big market that can forgive you when you're not perfect all the time is so critical. If you're in a bad market, and that means a small market, a market with pretty good alternatives, a market with really discriminating customers, with a market that doesn't have a ton of need, you have to be executing so well to keep those customers. And so, number one, pick a good market, and then number two, I think really identify who your customer is. So we did a series of tests up front around landing pages where we used a tool called Unbounce, which is a great product to basically throw up a value prop in a matter of hours. We put a bunch of ad dollars behind it for Facebook and Google. And our goal was to test value propositions. And at this point, we had built no product. This is just marketing tests, like what we call a false door test. There's no real product behind it. But we were just testing the value prop to understand, is this something people want? And then two, who really wants it and why? And so the goal was with these landing pages to see which value prop could get 100 people within a couple of weeks to put in their credit card in order to speak to us for a demo. And the credit card entry is really important because it create some skin in the game for your customers, and therefore is a signal of demand. Most people will put their email addresses in for anything. If you say, hey, do you want to try this product? And there's no consequences for not. Most people are like, yeah, sure, why not? But that doesn't mean they actually need it. That just means they're trying, it's loss aversion. They're just kind of keeping their options open. By asking someone to put their credit card in, you really can tell who actually wants the product. You don't charge the credit card in this test, but it's mainly assigned to say, this person cares so much about this problem that they will give you access to their credit card number just to speak to you. And so, of course, that's a high bar, but that's the point. You don't want to invest several years of your life into building a product for a market that's bad. And so you want a high bar in these early days on these really cheap, quick tests to make sure that you're going down the right road. And then, so we did that with Blaze. It wasn't called Blaze at the time. We called it Megan. But it kind of helped us understand where the value prop was, that we were onto something. And then we went and we spoke to several hundred customers who signed up using their credit card for the demo. And in those demos, 20 minutes of the 30 minutes were just spent talking to the customer. Who are you? What do you do? Why did you sign up for this demo? What problem are you trying to solve? What products are you using today to solve them? What are the downsides of them? If you could wave a magic wand, what would a great product do? We were really just trying to learn about the problem, their context, their decision-making criteria. And then the last 10 minutes is showing them a demo of your product, which in our case was like a Figma prototype. They couldn't access it. It was basically vaporware. Again, we had built very, very little because we were still trying to validate the market and the customer. And what we were looking for there was pull from the customers. And so what we saw was that when we did this demo with enterprise customers who are traditionally, great customers or seen as great customers because they have big contracts, they don't churn very often, there's lots of upsell opportunities. The big customers from large corporations were like, yeah, this is interesting. Like, let me go talk to my security team or my legal team, and like maybe we'll sign up for a pilot project in a couple months. It was kind of like, okay, maybe it's like a nice to have tool. But when we talked to our teams of one and small businesses, people were like jumping out of their seats, reaching through the computer screen to try and get the product from us. They were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Can I get access right now? How much is it? They were asking detailed questions around the product. And that sense of pull is what you really want when you're starting a business, because it shows you that the demand is so strong from a group of people that they will, again, kind of deal with the parts of your product that are unfinished or not good because you do one thing really well for them that nobody else does very well. And so these tests upfront helped us identify not just that there was a market here, but who in the market was really underserved. And that's, you asked before about traction. That's how we knew almost immediately that we had found a market that had a big problem with no one else serving it that we could target. And so we started building for them. And then, of course, we had to build a product that worked well. But again, if you have a great market, you have time to build a good product because people are so desperate that they're going to use a bad thing to deal with it because it's better than nothing. A lot of our customers, their alternative to using Blaze is doing nothing. Like before Blaze, they were writing no blog posts. They were doing nothing on social media because they didn't have the time or skills or resources. So compared to nothing, even a shitty version of Blaze is pretty good. And a great version of Blaze is something that they love. And finding that market early on has allowed us to build that great product over the last year.
I like that advice specifically because it's so ingrained into the right mindset that you have to be in order to succeed with a startup. And I think people look often to a step-by-step approach to things and stuff, but they don't look deeper, like what it really takes in order to succeed when it comes to being a founder. And if we were to look at you and pinpoint the beliefs that you truly stand by, what would be those in order to share with others and say, like, kind of this is the way you have to think in order to succeed in this space?
The dirty secret about startups is that it takes years to become an overnight success. Every startup founder that you might read about in the news that you idolize is somebody who has spent years trying and failing to start a breakout company. And the reason they were ultimately able to is, yes, they probably had some innate ability, but really, I think the number one common trait across all successful founders is that they didn't stop. They didn't quit. Humans are optimistic by nature. Startup founders are super optimistic because you're trying to do something no one's done before. You're making a bet on yourself. And that's good. If you knew how hard it was going to be, you probably wouldn't do it. That's why many startup founders don't, after they have like a huge success, they don't go and start another company because why would anyone want to live through this a second time? So there's, it's good that you're optimistic and somewhat ignorant at the start of the journey. But, when you're 2 years in and you still haven't fucking figured anything out, that's when the real test begins. And if you figure it out in the first 2 months, God bless, happy for you. But I've never heard of a founder that's had that experience. I know CEOs of the companies out there that are some of the largest and most successful startups in the last 10 years. None of them broke out within their first 2, 3, 4, 5 years of starting a business. If they did, they had a previous business that they worked on for 5 years that failed, And then their second business, they got it right, kind of like I was telling you with Blaze. Um, so it just takes reps. It takes time to learn these muscles, to build these muscles around how to build a startup, how to do it correctly. But before you kind of gain those muscles and figure it out, you're just getting punched in the face a lot, and you're eating glass, you're running into a wall. It is painful. It is hurt. It hurts. And I think this thing that separates successful founders from not is that when they are, walking through the forest at night in the fog and they're shivering cold and it's so easy to give up, they don't. And for me, I faced this moment many times where no one would have chastised me for stopping. Smart people I knew were like, don't, it's okay. You don't have to keep doing this. But for me, there's this like at that point, I just remember being like, there's just no way I'm gonna fail at this. Like I will do anything, but fail at this, fail at this. Like, and I have people whose money I've taken. I have a team that's depending on me. My career is resting on at least getting a base hit, if not a home run. And I think Blaze is a super home run. But I would have been happy just getting on base at all was success to me. The failure would have been not making it anywhere. And again, compared to other companies, it wasn't my struggles were not that bad. I raised $50 million. Like we got traction with almost immediately with both products we served. Like it's not a sob story by any stretch of the imagination, but it was still really fucking tough. I had 3 co-founders when I started the business. They all quit within the first 2 years. I had to basically psych myself up after that to say like, why do I really want to keep doing this when everybody else has left that I started this business with? And I think that answer for everyone is really personal. It's not the same reason for everybody. Um, for me, it's that I knew this is what I meant to do. I meant to start and run a company, and there was no other alternative. If I had left Blaze or Almanac and gone to work for somebody else, I probably would have quit that job, because the things that make me a great CEO, a great leader, a great founder are the same things that would make me a miserable person in a big corporation. You might be listening to this podcast and you're like, oh my God, Adam's so smart. He's so wise. Imagine having me reporting into you, telling you what I think the future is or what the answer is. Like, you wouldn't want to hear from me. So I knew that even though my job was super painful, building this company, the other choices I had about what I would do with my time would have been even more painful in a different way. Yeah, it might not have been the kind of loneliness or confusion that you feel as a founder, but it would have been for me an even worse form of pain, which is like trying to get my ideas through this morass of a big political organization. And so I knew that there was nothing else I could do except build a company, and I was already pretty far along. And again, I would do anything to make it successful. And I think just reaching this point, it's kind of I do a lot of work in the addiction space on the nonprofit side. I run a big board for a big treatment center here in San Francisco, and you often hear with addicts that they kind of reach this rock bottom point, and that's when they have a fork in the road and they decide, am I going to get clean or am I going to continue in my addiction? And I think founders also hit a rock bottom point at some point. It could be for, again, people leaving your company. It could be running out of money. It could be just losing steam. And it's at that point when you separate the wheat from the chaff, when you see what you're really made of on the inside. And every founder I've known has gone through this, who has gone on to be super successful. And all of those founders chose the hard path rather than the easy path because they knew it was right for them. And that's what I would just, encourage to anyone listening, that if you're near there or you're out there or you felt there, you just to keep going. Because if you put one foot in front of the other, and you just keep walking and you don't look down at the ground, but you look up and you try and listen and learn from what's happening around you, you will get better. You will make it through. And, it's just like anything. It takes reps, it takes iteration, it takes practice to get good at these specific skills of finding product market fit and finding distribution. Those are not things they teach you in grade school. They're not things they teach you at Google. They're things you have to learn on the job doing this. And unfortunately, it's painful as you learn it. And so that's not giving up is the thing that I think is the most important trait of great entrepreneurs.
Love that, because at the end of the day, almost anything can be turned around. You might not have the number one idea in the world, but if you stay long enough, probably all the others will quit until you arrive at the success or the finish line. And I think, yeah, I cannot think about any other trait that successful entrepreneurs have. And even when you feel like they are quitting, probably behind the scenes they are still doing something to improve or to change their outcome. On that note, I noticed that you launched recently a newsletter, Startup Tycoon. And what I love about it is that you actually share your own wisdom like you did here with us today. What motivates you to do so? To basically share what you know so openly.
Yeah, well, I wrote a tweet years ago that my team makes fun of me about. It was something like being a startup CEO is the loneliest job in the world, or being a founder is the loneliest job in the world, and it got like 10 million impressions. I had thousands of people writing into me saying, can you start a community? I want to talk to people. I want to talk to you and other people like me, and I it kind of reflects what I was saying before, how this is a job that you don't really have training for, where you learn while you're doing it, and it's a new set of skills that are really hard to master and take time, and it can be really unfun along the way. And growing up, I played a lot of computer games. I don't know, like if you did, but I loved Roller Coaster Tycoon and SimCity, and I especially loved having a cheat code, which is this like secret set of keys where if you type them, you got like unlimited budget, and you got to like quickly build the theme park of your dreams and like see kind of the other side of the rainbow once you won the game. I loved like not having to struggle through or wait for all the different levels that I have to master. I just wanted to get to the end and be a success. And there just aren't a lot of CEOs who are actively running successful companies today who are writing about what it's like to actually build a company. My friend Tyler Dank, who runs Beehive, also does this. But I could count on my hands the number of CEOs, successful CEOs, who are creating content or sharing their wisdom around their playbooks around how they built their companies. A lot of the content out there is from VCs who have never built anything, or from failed founders who I wouldn't listen to. And so what I want to do is, share some of the types of stuff that we've been talking about today at a really tactical level with people, so that you have the cheat codes to master your own game and get to the happy place of your dreams. It's and to make the journey less lonely for you and everyone else out there. And so it's the kind of resources I wish I had when I was starting the company. Like, okay, really tell me how to do hiring. Like, okay, don't fuck around with me. Tell me actually what fundraising is like. Like, don't give me these truisms that aren't real. Give me the play-by-play. Give me the cheat codes. And so that's what I'm trying to do with Startup Tycoon.
I love the mission because indeed it's a lonely world, and in the same time having access to these insights that often we don't, and can be a springboard forward rather than just try to figure out by ourselves or do our own mistakes rather than learning from the mistakes of others. And indeed, I think, not sure why people gatekeep this, like they don't share it, even that they are there in the weeds doing the work and being successful with different companies, and rather wait until they either retire or is not, let's say, up to date anymore. And I love the fact that you start this while you're actually succeeding in Blaze, and rather than waiting for 10, 20 more years to share your learnings. And for those interested, I'll put the link of Startup Tycoon down in the show notes as well. And to conclude our conversation, I would like you to think of an action point that those listening and they just enter the startup world will do in order to actually make it happen. Will be the starting a conversation with the customer, or will be something else that you will first do in order to get that from maybe that place of I don't know, questioning what you do towards the next breakthrough.
Yeah, I think there's great founders are often motivated by one of two reasons. Either starting a company is the only thing they can do, which I was describing for myself before, or they have an idea that keeps them up at night and wakes them up in the morning, something that they're excited to work on for another 5 to 10 years, which is, if you're lucky, what you'll be doing. Both are true for me. But I think, if you fall into the first camp where you're like, you feel it in your bones that you're meant to be a founder, it feels like you're calling, you hate working for other people. I think the best thing you can do is quit your job, and focus full time on a company. If you're trying to do it kind of on the side, on the nights and weekends, you're never going to get enough time to really talk to customers, really develop an idea. And sometimes I think you need to throw yourself off the cliff to learn how to fly. You don't get very far just by sitting on the ground. Um, and I think in the other case, talking to customers and and finding an idea, or even more importantly, a type of person that you love serving. Again, this is a misnomer that founders get enamored by their ideas, but really the important thing is finding a group of people, an industry, a person, a role that you love listening to. Because in the end, it's not going to be the idea that you think it's going to be that works. It's not going to be your idea at all. It's going to be a customer's idea. And founders that actually hate their customers or don't really like them, don't want to talk to them, don't want to listen to them, don't want to build for them. I love our customers at Blaze. I think they're the fucking best. I am in awe of what our customers have done, with their own ideas. They've all taken bets on themselves. They have tremendous courage and creativity and grit, way more than I have, because often they are building their businesses by their bootstraps. They don't have resources. They don't, they didn't go to Harvard Business School. I talked to a mom of 5 in Indiana who's building an agency on her own. I mean, that's way harder to do than what I've done here. And so I think the fact that I love our customers, I respect them, I want to learn from them, makes it so easy to build for them because I want them to succeed. And I think having a person or a group of people that you want to build for every single day and that you wake up excited to talk to is another way. Identifying that group for you is a really easy way to kind of dip your toe into the pool, look over the edge of the cliff a little bit if you're not there yet. But I think, those two things of finding a group of people you love building for, and then actually just fucking going for it and knowing that if you fail, you'll be fine. You're not going to die. You can probably get another job. It's totally okay. But taking that bet on yourself, I think both of those are necessary preconditions for building a great startup.
That's interesting because the way I did it, I actually built on the side for 1 year and have enough runway before I quit my job. But indeed, if you take your approach, I think you don't have an alternative. Oh, you do, like you said, like if you fail, you just go back, find another job, and you'll be fine. But having that limit that I need to make it work, I need to be out there every single day doing this. Otherwise, I'll have to get back to the job that I hate, or I have to do the same thing again. I think that pressure can reveal what you're built of. Plus,
when your back's against the wall, you really see what you're made of. And of course, both things can be true. I think if you don't feel like you have enough money in your bank account, it can be very distracting, and you'll end up doing a worse job on your startup than if you feel like you have some financial security. So I'm not advising anyone to just quit with only $10 to your name. Having a good amount of runway, having the space to build well is really important. But I also think that being too cautious and trying to test too much and over optimize can also mean that you never give yourself the chance to be great. And I think you often need to take that risk at some point and just make the leap. And I think sometimes the sooner the better. I've never heard someone say that they regretted jumping too early. I hear people often say that they regretted starting their company too late. And so it's scary, of course. But again, as you said, I think only when you jump can you really see if you can fly, and most people can.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it, because at the end of the day, we all can build great things and solve real problems, and there are so many problems we can solve in this world. So why not try?
Amen.
Thank you so much, Adam. It was great to talk to you and to listen to all your insights and wisdom after running such a successful company. Can be more grateful that I have you here with me today.
Well, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.